I'm here to talk to you about a new approach to harassment policy. This all actually began under my undergraduate when I was looking at employment discrimination within the transgender community and looking at the 2009 National Transgender Discrimination Survey. And with that survey, it reported that trans women of color face up to 4 times the amount of harassment versus the regular community. So this struck my interest in wanting to look at how hate crime specifically actually protected this group that has multiple aspects of their identity that should be protected under their gender, their race, their class, and yet for some reason they're still falling within the cracks. So out came the 2015 survey, and this is what I was using as my basis for a lot. And within, as you can see, that 58% responded that they had one or more forms of harassment by the police. Underneath that is that quote from one individual speaking about how they were forced by the police to strip in public, verbally harassed by the police themselves. And on that within that same survey, 1 in 10 reported physical acts of violence that they affected by. This survey was 27,000 individuals across the entire United States. Now, if you were having this type of act happen to you on any type of daily basis, and yet you knew if you went to speak to the police that you are just being re-victimized over and over again, how well do we actually know the rate of hate crime that these individuals are facing? So that one led me to looking at the actual statistical reports that's being reported by Washington State and then by the FBI. These two statistical reports use the same numbers. In fact, the one here on the right, sorry, my right, yes. I always do that, is the collected data by the Washington Association of Police Chiefs. As you can see, the numbers for 3 different years, 2014, 15, and 16. Now, why these 3 categories is because I said I'm looking at for the specifics between trans women of color. Now, because of incidences, they're often sometimes misreported and just considered by their race category, or they're considered by their gender category, or they'll end up falling in the sexual orientation category. This group often gets miscoded into different categories. So it's hard to find where their numbers are, how many, or what the effect rate actually is on these individuals. And as you see, there's a difference. Now the difference, while it's small, these are individual lives that somehow, from our own reported within our state, aren't being counted within that national database the same way. Now they say you shouldn't compare these because they don't use the same categories, yet when you look at both reports, they break them down exactly the same way: race, gender, disability. They break them down over where the crime happened, what type of crime it was. So it doesn't make a lot of sense why the numbers would be different. It makes that gap, and you want to know where that gap is. Which leads me to looking at our malicious harassment, which is RCW 9A.36.08A. 080, sorry. As you can't tell, I've read that a lot. Now within our zone, it says a person is guilty of malicious harassment if he or she maliciously and intentionally commits one of the following acts because of his or her perception of the victims. And we can see everything that's covered. You notice gender identity is not within ours. It's not stated. Yet, individuals are protected within their gender identity. Washington State has changed the definition of social orientation to include gender identity. Yet, if you look at this, you wouldn't think that. You would think, my gender identity is not protected. You'd have to continuously dig in there to see. And also within that, it's just, the language itself, to me, it's broken down. Every aspect of your identity has to be broken down to this, this, this. It's not a full person. And also the other issue that I see when you're looking at the RCW, there's only 2 clear examples that they say these are hate crimes. These are clear examples. We don't need to go too further. If a perpetrator commits these 2, it's a pretty clear-cut case. So this actually led me to what I am calling for as a new approach to actually a guideline of how we look at harassment policies. I propose, instead of breaking it down by every aspect, which we do include when you do any report, because it's all based on the perpetrator's perceived vision of the victim's identity. These are all aspects of an individual's identity. The victim should be able to speak for themselves and say, I was attacked because of this aspect of my identity. These are the aspects I was attacked. It would allow us to create a better tracking of the data. We'd be able to look at a different way to protect these individuals instead of having them parsec and constantly repeat what's happened to them, constantly be overburdened with having to do this. Let's quit re-victimizing the individuals and find a better way to help them from the very beginning. Thank you.